Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be showing you the G4560 running with a GTX 1060, and I'll try to get to 60 frames per second on all the games, getting good quality out of them too. So it will be quality and 60 frames per second when possible, and I will explain you how to get better performance if you want to get this combo. So yeah, enjoy the video. So first I'll be doing Battlefield 1 multiplayer, 1080p, ultra settings, with everything maxed out, using the RTX 11 since the RTX 12 gave me some stutters that weren't really very comfortable, and the game overall was below 60 frames per second on very intensive fights. This is the worst performance I got on a match so far. A lot of people playing the same place, a lot of explosions, vehicles present, all that kind of stuff kills the performance since the CPU is limiting the GPU. As you can see there, the CPU is at 100% and the GPU is below 90%, so we are not taking advantage of all the GPU power since the CPU is not capable of doing everything. But to have a better experience, I suggest capping the game at 60 frames per second from the options menu and lowering the mesh quality from ultra to medium. That helps a little bit and the game is more stable, but so far it's totally playable. Fallout 4, 1080p, TAA on anti-aliasing, 16 times anisotropic and ultra preset, as you can see here in advanced, everything on ultra. I'm keeping God Rays on ultra too, which is unnecessary, but the GPU can handle it. And I turn off weapon debris, and I'll just move around in Diamond City, since this is the place that I had the most performance issues at. As you can see there, the frame rate is below 60 frames per second when I'm looking far into the distance, and the frame rate, as you can see, is uncapped. Same problem as before. The CPU is limiting the GPU, aka bottleneck. The CPU is at over 70% usage and the GPU is below 80% when we are looking far into the distance, which can happen a lot while traveling through the world, but this game is not very well optimized, as you can see.
Beautiful hairstyles from across the Commonwealth.
Hey, swata can hit. Boom!
Shop in safety. No sense allowed at the surplus.
Cam I Care cares about you.
Nothing to see here.
GTA 5, I'm going to be using variable settings. A mix between high and very high, pretty much, with advanced graphics turned off, and I'll be just exploding vehicles, and then I'll fly a helicopter, so we'll have a lot of explosions, alpha effects, all that kind of stuff, and you will again see that the CPU usage is very high and the GPU usage is quite low. It's around 50 to 70% pretty much, so that means that you can crank up the settings actually in this game, or crank up the resolution, and you have very similar frame rates. 1440p should be totally playable. I mean, it should be very similar to this, but it's very close to 60 frames per second overall. Then I'll just get onto a chopper and fly around the city a little bit, just to see when we load a lot of assets very quickly how the CPU can react, and I was surprised that it stays pretty close to 60 frames per second. The Witcher 3, I'll be doing a mix between high and ultra on 1080p. As you can see, the shadows are on high, the grass and the foliage visibility range are on high too, and instead of HBAO, I'm using SSAO. So I'm going to be going into Novigrad, the most CPU intensive part of this game as far as I'm concerned, and you'll see that as I'm getting closer and closer to Novigrad, the CPU usage will be higher and the GPU usage will drop a little bit, but you'll see that the frame rate will drop too. So as I'm getting further into the city, you'll see that the frame rate will be more unstable with some stutters every now and then, but it only happens here. Outside the city it's not as bad as here. You'll see drops as low as 40-45 frames per second while moving into the city, which isn't that bad, since outside the city, or when you're not moving that fast, you won't really see those stutters. So yeah, it's playable.
Your very presence is an affront to the eternal fire.
Beg your pardon?
To surrender unorthodox bugs.
Slow now. Whoa.
Hitman, I'll be doing 1080p and I'll be showing you ultra settings first, so you can see how the game runs overall. I chose Marrakesh, one of the places with the highest number of NPCs, and as you will see it's over 30 frames per second, but it's a huge number of NPCs on screen. Later in this footage I'll just lower the draw distance, which in this case is level of detail, from ultra to low, and you'll see a slight difference in performance, so that helps if you want to get a better experience.
Alright there?
I could just about strangle you. Stomach cramps. What kind of idiot eats shellfish from a buffet? This heat.
Relax, Pam. I hired a local cameraman. Freelance guy, he'll be fine.
Oh well, if you're not worried, Tyler, then I'm not worried. After all, it's not like this is a very important interview. I mean, it's certainly not like it's an exclusive or anything.
Pam, you remember that talk we had about low blood sugar? Yeah, this is one of those times.
Oh, so where is this guy anyway?
Be here. And you have a banana.
Get over here!
Just cast 3, 1080p, and the maximum settings once again. As you can see, everything turned on or very high, and I'm using SMAA. So here my objective is to go down there, blow up a gas station. That will kill the performance. The gas station explosions are the worst for the system overall. And then I'll just fly around and fight with the army, and that will be it. And you'll see a lot of drops below 60 frames per second. I tried this with an i7 on a separate video before, and it's very easy to hit 60 frames per second or over that target with an i7. So it's mostly a CPU thing, and as you can see the RAM usage isn't that high either. If you just subtract the free RAM value from 8 GB, it will tell you the RAM usage. Since it's around 1.3 GB free from the RAM, it's around 6.7 GB of usage, so it's not using all the RAM, which is good. But yeah, overall it's playable, but it has a lot of drops below 60 frames per second.
I'm only going to ask you one more time.
Reports of violence in the area. All units converge. Sending additional reinforcements to your location. The target escaped. Return to your posts.
That's an explosion.
The Division, I'm going to be using 1080p and DirectX 12 since it uses less CPU overall, and on the settings I'm using Ultra, the Ultra preset with some tweak stuff, so I did some tweaking here and there to reach 60 frames per second if possible. And I'll be just doing a mission where I can just fight with a lot of guys that have flamethrowers, so I can stress the GPU more and see how the CPU handles all that stuff. But yeah, overall it's over 60 frames per second with some drops every now and then, but nothing really too bad about it. It's totally playable. I can shoot normally. I'm terrible at shooting, but at least I can aim correctly in this one. If you get a better CPU, you can be over 60 frames per second much easily, so keep that in mind. With an i5 it should be enough. But yeah, so far you can play it just fine.
Sarah was using the site as a mass grave, which explains why the cleaners have targeted it. Avoid contact if possible, but do what you have to do to make sure Rhodes gets us the juice we need. That is...
Auxiliary relay. Target acquired. Sub-level 3.
Cover me! Job to do! Here's our chance!
Assassin's Creed Unity 1080p, and I'm going to be using some tweaked settings, no GameWorks features or anything like that. As you can see, environment on high, textures on the maximum, shadows on high instead of PCSS, SSAO instead of HBAO+, bloom turn on and anti-aliasing turn off. And as you can see, I'm in Paris, in a place with a lot of NPCs, as you can see. And I'll be just running around and trying to fight with some people every now and then, but as you can see, the CPU will be at 100% and the GPU will be around 60s or 70s in the percentage of usage. So that's again bottleneck. The CPU is limiting the GPU. With a better CPU you can get 60s just fine, so keep that in mind. But so far the game is playable. You can just crank up the settings, target 30 or 45 and it will be enough. Sniper Elite 4, I'll be doing 1080p, ultra settings, and I'll be using DirectX 12 since it ran better than DirectX 11 on this title in particular. And as you can see, we're above 60 frames per second. I didn't have any issue with this game. It ran over 60 no problem, and it used the GPU at 100% pretty much all the time. The CPU usage is 50% and the GPU usage is at 99%, so really not much to worry about. It might drop below 60 when there are big explosions or an X-ray cam, but you're not actually in control of the game in that case, so it's not really an issue for me, but it's good to know. Rise of the Tomb Raider, I'm using DirectX 12 on 1080p with SMAA anti-aliasing, and I'll be using pretty much a mix between medium and high, since this game is very demanding, targeting 60 frames per second once again, and I'm going to be playing this short clip in a very CPU intensive level, so keep that in mind. You'll see that the CPU will be pretty much at 100% all the time, and the GPU usage will be below 90% pretty much all the time too. There are some exceptions, but you can easily get to 60 frames per second with these settings using a better CPU, as I repeated across all the video. An i5 here is still enough to get 60s, so keep that in mind, but still you can play the game just fine. This is just the worst case scenario.
Lara, I'm sorry if Sophia was less than welcoming.
I understand. I'm just glad you were there to vouch for me.
My people have spent decades fighting outsiders. It's not an easy habit to break. See if you can lend a hand with the preparations. A little hard work would go a long way towards building trust.
I'll see what
Doom, I'll be doing 1080p until it's in TSS-AA ATX. And on the advanced graphics, I'm using everything on the maximum, including the textures and the shadows on Nightmare, so I'm using the actual maximum settings. And you'll see that I'm above 60 frames per second pretty much all the time, sometimes tapping into 100 frames per second. So I wasn't expecting that good of a performance. I'm using OpenGL 4.5. In this case, it ran better on OpenGL for me than Vulkan. Vulkan ran much better on AMD cards, so keep that in mind. But yes, you can see I'm over 60 frames per second, no issues whatsoever. Forza Horizon 3, I'll be doing 1080p, but first I'm going to show you I'm using the Pentium G4560, a GTX 1060 6GB. Down there, 8 gigs of RAM, dual channel. You can see my task manager here with everything running in the background, so you can have an idea of what's going on. And in the game, 1080p, as I said. And on the advanced graphics, I'm using a mix between high and ultra, as you can see there, with medium workout level of detail, since that affects the CPU for what I could see. And I'm using the X-Story for the frame rate. The rest is seen by cam. And as you can see there at the bottom right corner of the video, the CPU is being used pretty much at 64%. Sometimes it will spike, but as you can see I'm not getting to 60 frames per second, and the GTX 1060 is not even used at 70%. It's again, the CPU is limited the GPU. It doesn't look like it, since it's not using any of those two things, CPU or GPU, effectively. I mean, I would expect the CPU to be at 100% and the GPU to be at 50%, but not to have the CPU at 60 to 80, and the same with the GPU. So something is wrong here with the optimization, but yeah, the game is still playable. FIFA 17, I'll be doing 4K on this one, and ultra settings without MSAA and unlock frame rates. So yeah, this one is at 4K. So in this match, very short clip, you'll see that we are over 100 frames per second, excepting when there are cinematics or replays or, I don't know, corner kicks, something when you see the camera behind a player. In those cases, the frame rate is capped at 30, but you can unlock it in the media control panel. I personally didn't unlock it because I forgot, but it's possible. The frame rate is much worse when those camera angles are shown. Instead of getting 100 frames, you're getting 40, 50. But yeah, I tried this one since it's a popular game that a lot of people want to play.
Higuain, defended well. Now Luis Suarez. Europe, he's found some space. It's got in!
And finally CSGO, I'll be doing 1080p and the maximum settings. I know I should have tried the lowest setting for some of you that want the highest frame rate, but you'll see my point when I'm using the maximum settings. So as you can see here, I'm getting very high CPU usage as expected, and GPU usage is very low. It's pretty much below 30% most of the time, but still totally playable. Over 100 frames per second. We cannot get more frames due to the CPU. I use some commands in order to get the game to run better. So yeah guys, that's pretty much all I had to show you. As you can see, the G4560 has some problems hitting 60 frames per second on some CPU intensive games, but that was to be expected. But I just showed you this to know what you're getting into if you want to buy this CPU and this GPU. I think that this is worth it, in the way that, well, maybe you want to build the PC, you don't have a lot of money, so you spend way less on the CPU. Example, G4560, I got it for $60 US, so you can get the PC much cheaper, but you can still play games close to 60 frames per second. So in the meantime, you can save up money, get a better CPU, and well, I don't know, maybe you get an i5 7500 or something like that, and you'll be able to play at 60. So personally, I think that it's a good idea if you want to play games. In the meantime, you're saving for a better CPU, but that's up to you. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.